Customizing your labor calculation. In this instructional video, we'll demonstrate the power of PostFrame Manager when it comes to figuring labor for any building you create. There are two ways to get to the PostFrame Manager Labor Placement Calculation Editor. When you first launch PostFrame Manager from your desktop, click on Project Tools and Editors. That brings up the PostFrame System Tools screen. If you're in the process of creating a building, clicking your mouse with the cursor positioned within the building outline brings up the navigation menu. Click the Edit Building Wing Attributes menu item to bring up the Primary Attributes screen. At the bottom of this screen is the Systems Tools and Editors menu. Click the plus button next to that item to reveal the Tools menu. Click that item to bring up the PostFrame System Tools screen just mentioned. Click on Labor Placement Calculation Editor from this screen. Note that there are three tabs across the top of the Trim Controller screen: Trim, Fasteners, and Labor. Click on the Labor tab. Next, click on the Load Existing Labor Config File button in the lower left and scroll to the right. There are several preloaded labor packages to choose from. Select the labor file you previously identified that reflected the method that most closely approximated the way you want to figure labor. See the Preparing to Customize Your Labor Calculation instructional video for more information on this topic. Once you have selected the file you want to use, your chosen laborconfig.pkl file will be shown in blue text under the File in Use notation. To edit the labor config file selected, note that each line is its own calculation. The measure code times a multiplier times a rate number equals the labor calculated for that task. Each measure code is a measured value about the building that you create and is defined in bold print below the descriptor box. For example, if you click on a line that has a PSA measure code, you will see that the bold text says number of posts or columns embedded. So that measure code is used to calculate hole drilling time, placement of sackcrete or precast cookies, post column setting time, or any other post column derived value. So if you had a building with 32 posts or columns times a multiplier of 5 minutes per post, that equals 160 minutes or 2.67 hours. Multiply that times a rate of $40 an hour, which results in $106 of cost for drilling holes. Clicking on a line with the GTE measure code yields number of post connections, exterior girts. This measure code would be used to calculate the time for mounting girts on the building. So, if you had a building with 252 girt to post connections times 2.33 minutes per girt, that would equal 587 minutes or 9.79 hours. Multiply that times your $40 per hour labor rate, and that equals $391 in labor to mount girts, and so on. These are the calculated values for labor that you see on the Analytical Reports tab, Labor Summary. Note that each measure code is conditional. In other words, it won't calculate unless that condition exists. For example, WNT is a measure code for tops of windows. This measure code will only generate a calculation if a window is placed in the building to which the labor config file containing that measure code is applied via the Access Customer Specific Information window. As in the examples provided, the multiplier field is typically minutes. It is also often used for flat values. For example, a PER measurement code, selected from the drop-down list under Measure Code, represents the perimeter of the wing. This value multiplied by 0.70 or some other value of choice might provide you with a good cost of site preparation and marking. On a 30 by 40 foot building, the PER value would yield 140 linear feet times 0.70, which would equal 98 minutes or 1.63 hours, again times your $40 labor rate, and that would yield a cost of $65 to mark the site. Now let's talk about labor rates. If you were clocking a task on the job site, you wouldn't determine that the task took 0.167 hours. You'd clock it at 10 minutes, which is 1.67 times 60 minutes per hour. Given the minute thinking, labor rate should be set as a per minute value. So, the $40 per hour labor rate discussed previously would be entered on one of the labor rate lines on the right side of the screen as 0.67. That's $40 an hour divided by 60 minutes in an hour. So, once you have your labor rate set, you simply create all desired calculations as measure code times a multiplier times the rate number, where the rate number refers to the list 1 through 10 on the right. When you've completed an edit to a line in the labor package, click the Accept Save button. If the PKL extension shows on your screen, you're good to go. Just click the Windows Save button. Some operating systems do not show the PKL extension. If your PC does not, just type it in after the labor package name each time you save. Note that you may also create your own labor package name. When you click Accept Save, you can just as easily rename it to mylaborcalc.pkl and then continue your edits and saves to your own personalized labor config file. Then apply that PKL file to your buildings. An alternate approach to labor used by some is a basic per square foot price plus add-ons. SimpleLabor.pkl or per square foot labor.pkl are samples of these types of labor calculations. The same calculation of measure code times multiplier times a rate number still applies, but it's based more on a lumped per square foot price than on task-based calculations. Typically, someone using this type of calculation has a different per square foot value for various heights of buildings. The reason is obvious: more rows of girts. PostFrame Manager's native calculations, like the GTE girt to post calculation discussed previously, already compensate for the additional rows of girts. So usually, one task-based labor package calculates accurately for all buildings until you get to a really large building, at which point you may want a labor package with a slightly lower multiplier in several calculations. Finally, when working with your chosen labor package, if it is the package that is applied to the building you have open via the Access Customer Specific Information screen, all you need to do is click Calculate Price and then view the changed results via the BOM Reports, Analytical Reports, Labor Summary tab. This ends the Customizing Your Labor Calculation instructional video.